It's my great pleasure to announce the next speaker. With us is Roger Dingledine from the Tor project, who is one of the designers of Tor, the onion router, and he'll give a brief overview of what Tor is, does, and its shortcomings, and what will need to be done next. And the floor is yours.
Okay. Hi, I'm Roger Dingledine, and I'm the Tor project leader and one of the main developers. And I'm going to try to tell you a little bit about how Tor works right now. How many people were at Stephen's talk in the last session? Okay, great. So quite a few hands. So there are a lot of different things I want to talk about today. I'm going to try to give you a lot of different ideas, and hopefully they'll sink in over the next hour and over the next day. And hopefully some of you will come up to me tomorrow and say, I solved one of your problems. So I'll try to give you as many open problems as I can, and we'll go from there. So there are a lot of different things to talk about. I'll talk a little bit about the goals of what we're trying to do with blocking resistance and the assumptions and threat model that we have in mind, and what Tor offers now, what we need to fix, and all of the other problems that show up that we don't have good answers to yet. Okay, so the big picture for Tor. We're an anonymity network, and we let people browse the web or instant message without certain attackers being able to learn what's going on. We come with freely available open source software. There aren't any patents. You can do whatever you want to with it. Sell it, change it, give it away. It comes with a full specification and full documentation. We're one of the very few projects out there that actually give you an RFC-style specification of this is how you build your own Tor client and server. And 2 different research groups have produced their own compatible versions. The European Union Prime project picked Tor as their anonymity layer, so they decided that was the most flexible, the most scalable, the most documented system available. We've got some number of users. It's an anonymity network, so it's a bit hard to count them exactly. So we're guessing maybe a few 100,000. And then PC World Magazine picked us as number 40 of the top 100 products last year. We beat out Wikipedia, we beat out the iPod. Who knows? So one of the really fun parts about working on Tor is that there are so many different groups who need the security properties that it offers. We talk to ordinary private citizens, and we describe it as a privacy system. We talk to businesses and corporations, and we say it's communication security, it's network security. Obviously you need that. You might not need privacy, but you need communication security. And then we talk to governments, and they don't need privacy, they don't really need network security, but boy, do they need traffic analysis resistant communication networks. So the fun part about all of this is to try to figure out how to phrase it for all the different users so that we can bring them all into the same group, because we need military, dissidents, people in China, law enforcement, Google, Walmart. We need all of these people in the same group so that they can blend together. Otherwise, everybody would know that this is the anonymity network that the CCC runs and the CCC uses, and I wonder who is coming out of it. Obviously, it's somebody from the CCC. So the goal is to bring a lot of different groups together so you have no idea what's actually coming out of the network. Okay, so how do you build an anonymity system in the very simple way? The basic idea is you put a big computer somewhere and it relays a lot of traffic. A bunch of people show up. We've got a lot of Alice's there on the left side. They all show up to the big computer and they say, I want Indie Media, I want CNN, I want Voice of America. And then it fetches the websites and gives them back. And that's great. There are a lot of systems out there that work like that. The problem is the big central point of failure. You can bribe the janitor, get a job as the janitor, threaten the CEO, send a nice guy named Guido, send a subpoena. There are so many different ways to attack a central point like that. So our goal is we want to distribute the trust. We want to make it so that the connection goes over several different relays, and no single relay knows about both Alice and Bob. So in this case, if the first guy is bad, he knows that Alice is using the system, but he doesn't know who Alice is talking to. And if the last guy is bad, he knows that somebody is talking to Bob, but he doesn't know who's talking to Bob. So that's the crash course in Tor, and I'll answer a few more questions later on about it, and hopefully that'll get you enough to start moving. So the way that we actually do this is we build what are called tunneled connections through that. So Alice establishes a key with R1, and then she tunnels from there to R2 and establishes a new key, and from there to R3, and then she can talk to various Bobs, maybe CNN, Voice of America, Indie Media, something like that. And the idea is that R1 knows Alice is talking, but because of the encryption, he can't figure out what Alice is saying or who she's talking to. So far, so good? Okay. So what I'm talking about here is blocking resistance. Let's say you're a Tor user in China. We have quite a few users in China. I think they're either the number 2 or the number 3 country in terms of Tor users. There are maybe 30,000 people running Tor clients in China right now. And it works. They use it. They're happy. But if China wanted to block it, it wouldn't be that hard to do. You can block the directory authorities. I'll tell you later on what those are. You can grab the whole list of all the 800 Tor servers out there, and you can block all of them. Or you can look at the network fingerprint and say, that looks like a Tor handshake. I'm going to block that connection right now. So I'm going to try to fix some of this today. So what we're trying to do here is we want to attract a whole lot of different relay addresses. I'll tell you more about what that means later. We need to normalize Tor's network fingerprint, make it so that when somebody is making a Tor connection, you can't say, hey, look, that's Tor. We need to solve the discovery problem. How do you actually figure out what you can connect to, what is available that China hasn't blocked yet? And we really don't want to screw up our anonymity properties while we're doing this. And that makes it really hard because we don't really understand how anonymity works right now. So when we add even more complex pieces to it, hard to say what will mess up. So that makes it one of the big open problems. Okay, so threat model. What are we trying to deal with here? First of all, we want to try to defend against a really strong attacker. This is how all the academic designs work and how all good security designs work. We want to say, even if you're really strong, we still defend against you because in reality, in practice, attackers tend to be stronger than we expect them to be. And we also are able to defend against weaker attackers. I was talking to an American corporation recently, and they have a new network policy. Thou shalt not use Tor on our network. And maybe that's bad for their security or their privacy or their users. That's up to them. But I'd like to be able to handle attackers like that as well. So we've got a lot of different users in mind, people in all the various countries that Reporters Without Borders has declared are internet black holes, whistleblowers in corporate networks. Who knows what's going to happen next? We'd like to solve all of that. Okay, so what's the attacker trying to do here? One of the most challenging parts of this is trying to figure out what problem we should actually solve. I hear from a lot of different people who say, I'm going to solve the China problem, and this is what I think the China problem is. And when you talk to people in China, that's not the problem they have at all. So one of the big questions here is, how do we actually figure out what we need to solve? So the first piece is, what's the attacker trying to do? He's trying to restrict the flow of information, lots of different types. Maybe it's embarrassing information. Something happened in our country and we don't want to let the world know about it. Maybe it's opposition. Somebody's trying to organize some dissidents or something like that. And maybe we don't actually need to stop that flow of information. We just need to give people the impression that we're doing it. And then they won't speak, even if they could speak. Complete blocking is not a goal. It's not even necessary. We don't have to stop everybody from communicating. We just have to stop most people, the easy ones, the ones that don't care that much. And similarly, we don't have to stop every circumvention tool. We don't have to make sure that every single possible way to get out of China is stopped. We just have to stop the ones that are really popular and effective, the ones that actually work, and the ones that are highly visible, the ones that write a lot of media articles saying, I've just built a tool and my tool is going to take over democracy all around the world. They may not work, that doesn't matter. The goal of the censors is to say, all of these things that you've read in the news, they're not true. We take care of that. We keep you safe. Another big assumption, If you're just reading news in China, maybe you connect to some website that they forgot to censor, they're not going to do anything to you. The worst that happens when you go to a website you should not have gone to and read it is they say, oops, and then they add it to the list of websites that they censor. They don't go hunt you down and kill you just because you read the wrong thing. On the other hand, if you're publishing things, if you're organizing, if you're describing new information, then they get very upset. So one of the big assumptions we make is you're allowed to use the internet and they won't get that angry as long as you're not providing new information, as long as you're not producing and distributing information. And then another big assumption, the people who are doing this censoring have a lot of economic and political and social incentives not to block the whole internet. This is certainly true in China, where their economics are going to be based on communicating and working with the rest of the world. It's not necessarily true in a bunch of the former Soviet Union states. Maybe you're just screwed there. We can't solve that problem at the same time as other problems. And also, we should keep in mind, they don't mind collateral damage. If there's a website somewhere that they really want to make it go away, and there are 15,000 other websites on that same computer, so be it. Let's block them all. So we can't have everything, but we're at least starting with some assumptions that help us figure out what to solve. There are three big attacks that we've been seeing from these various censors from a lot of different countries. One of the big ones is they have a list of IP addresses, and if they see any packets going to those IP addresses, they drop those packets on the floor. Another big one is keyword searching. They look at all the different TCP packets that are going through, and if they see a certain word in the TCP packet, then they either drop that packet on the floor or they send resets in both directions to make things shut down. There are a lot of different approaches for that. But the second big idea is they look for little strings in the TCP packets. It's a very simple attack. And then the third one is they intercept DNS requests and they give back garbage, or they point you at a website saying, are you really sure you want to look at that page because you're an immoral person? So there are a lot of different approaches that they use there. Okay, so what are we trying to design against? The firewall that they have can't spend that much time looking at every single connection. It can't look at something and say, was that a valid public key interaction, and did they sign it correctly, and so on. It can do a little bit of operations, but it sure can't do a lot of computation for every single person who is looking at some website. So fortunately, we don't need full steganography. We can chat about that more afterwards also. And there's probably going to be a time lag between somebody in Thailand learning how to censor something and somebody in China learning how to censor something. They don't immediately talk to each other. Probably the best way that they will communicate that to each other is through American corporations. Cisco is going to say, hey, I learned how to oppress your citizens better. I'm going to sell that to all these different countries that want to buy it. The other side of that is the insider threat is probably not a worry at the beginning because they don't even know that we exist. Once we become either popular and effective or have a lot of press, then they'll start to care. Before that, it doesn't matter. Another critical thing to keep in mind, the censorship is different even inside various countries. The directive that China has, as far as I can tell, is they tell all the different ISPs, don't embarrass us. That's the whole summary. And then each ISP has to figure out what that means and figure out which pages they shouldn't let people do and things like that. So it's going to be different depending on which province you're in and what time of day and so on. And then another assumption, attackers can go to various countries and companies and list their help. They can go to Yahoo or Cisco or Google or who knows and say, hey, can you let us know who that person is because they're our citizen and we'd like to help them. So there are a lot of different approaches we need to keep in mind for that also. And I don't like this assumption, but I have to make it at this point. Assume the users are not being attacked by their hardware and software. I was chatting with a couple of people from an East Asian communist country a little while ago, and they told me some pretty bad stories. They said, people walk into our house and they answer our Skype calls. There's a guy across the street with a parabolic microphone listening